Thank you, Tanya. So glad to be here. I'm sorry I missed last time. Thank you, Carell, for letting us do this, and I'm excited to work and excited to see what Karen and Peggy have in store for us. Well, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to click on Window, and I'm going to come down to Reference Image. This is something new in Painter X3. And then I'm going to go here to open a reference image, and the image that we're going to be working with is this one here, which I guess y'all saw last time. I'm not sure. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a template. I have lots of templates, and I like to use templates because then I can have most everything set up ready for me to go. And I'm opening up a template that I call Sumia, and it's an 8 by 11 size, I believe. And so we'll just make it a little bit bigger. What you'll see is that I have a blank canvas because I'm going to be working with watercolor, and I like to drop things to the canvas occasionally. And I have a layer that gives me this texture paper. I have a group here that is actually my my signature, in which I'm not really sure is real. I got that off the internet, but you'll see. And then I have a watercolor layer ready to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take this image, and I'm not so interested in copying this image at all. What I want to do is just use it as a reference or a jumping off point for some sort of inspiration. So I'm going to click on the magnifier here, and I'm going to bring this in a little bit bigger, and let's see what I can come up with. I kind of like this area right in here as an inspiration. Now, am I going to try and do this exactly like that? Nah. What I'm doing is I'm just going to use it for inspiration, like I said. So I'm going to start. Now, all of these brushes that I'll be using today will be available on my blog. And so don't worry about that. You can get them at some point. Now, I'm going to work only in black and white, but I'm bringing this first brush up lighter, and I'm just going to lock in this area down here. And it's just very light blocking. And I'll add a little more darkness to it just in places. And then I'll let go and let it diffuse and see kind of what I get. And that's really all I wanted, was just a kind of an indication here of an area. Now I'm going to come up here, and I just want to put in a bit of that mountain line, and I'm going to come down a little bit, increase my pressure a bit, and then I'm going to come back with a very light pressure, and this brush will take out some of the color that's there. And so I'm getting a little bit more of a uneven line at the bottom. And I'll let that go. And it's just real soft. Now I know what I'm going to do, so I'm going to kind of bring a little more softness up here. Just kind of out in the side there like that. Maybe a little more. I tell you what, I'm going to have to take that one off. You know, a lot of times you have to go back and do something. I'm putting on pause diffusion. Now you're going to hear me say I'm going to start pause concentration. Every time I see that word, I'll say pause concentration. But anytime I say that, know that I'm saying pause diffusion. Okay, so I'm going to come back and kind of put a little opening, a little color up here, a little darker than I was using before. Then I'll come back with this. Then I can come up. This allows me to lift my brush and still work. See, I don't want it to be too strong, but I do want a little bit of shape or activity up there. And you'll see why in a minute. I will click that off. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to go to damp to wet wash. Now these are not really wash brushes there. I just call them that for the lack of a word. But I'm going to start my tree here. And I'm just going up, up, up. I'm going to lock that layer, and I'm going to add a new watercolor layer. That'll, in case I mess this up, I won't have to worry about it. Now I'll get rid of that because I want to be in a much darker color. And what I do for this is just kind of bring up several brush loads, and I want this tree to break. Oops, that didn't exactly break the way I wanted. I want it to break into two parts. And I'm doing that because I don't want to add this extra tree over here, but I need some weight over there. So I'm just looking at this vertical against these two horizontals. And that's really the inspiration I'm picking up here. Okay, can somebody tell me how long I've been going? Anybody know?
I'm sorry, Skip, what did you ask?
Do you know how long I've been going?
Oh, you've been going for about 6.5 minutes.
Okay,
and,
thank you.
Carrie wanted you to know that you get such great results with your watercolor brushes. You're the master.
Thank you, Carrie. Carrie's a sweetheart, too. She really can do beautiful work. And you know, this doesn't exactly look like a pine at this moment, but I don't care.
It looks nice.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna do some different stuff with it, and even these little limbs are not going to show much. Okay, so I've got my bones there, and now I'm going to start coming back in with the same brush. And this brush is set up that when you paint fast, it has less opacity. So it gives you less opacity if you paint really fast. And then if you paint slow, you get more opacity. And if you put in lots of the black, really heavy, you just go back over that several times, you'll get a surprise. You let go and you get a bit of a run like that. Now I actually want it to run a little more, so I'm going to put a little more black in there. And I have this set up to run with a flow map. And so I've got a flow map set up that looks like this. And it'll give you these nice little lines going through there.
Skip, I have a question from Josie. Where did the templates that you created come from?
Well, I make them. What you do for a template is you just create a riff file, and then you save it to the template folder in your user files under the workspace that you're working with. If you'll give me a few minutes, there we go. I'll show you how to do that.
Okay, great.
We'll do that at some point real quick. Let me get these parts of this tree down here first.
Okay. We can always save it for the end.
Okay. Well, that might be good. I think what I need to do now, this is the advanced brush controls. I need to change my spacing, size rather. I want to bring up my min size to about 50 or 60%. And then when I do this, when I do this soft stuff, All right, Skippy, let's take this up just a little bit. Then when I do the soft stuff, it won't be quite so linear. I don't mind it being somewhat linear, but not quite that much. So see, I can do this and start it. This will work faster. Is that our time? Okay.
That is your time.
All right, we'll move on to somebody else, and I'll may play with this a little more. But as
All
you
right.
can see, it's developing up. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
I'll pass it along to Karen while you're working behind the scenes. Thanks, Skip.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Tanya, for having me, and hi, Skip and Peggy. I wanted to show this just real quickly in regards to some of the little tips that I often recommend to new digital artists coming into the field and artists that are already painting. And I'm just going to keep this up for a second, but the most important one that I have on here is the reference image, because I know we use reference images quite a bit in our work. And again, remember that photo, that reference image is for inspiration, but realize that you have something really unique to share and let that image speak to you. And from that, I'm going to go ahead and go into my image that I've got started here for you. And I want to talk about the first thing that I usually do when I get going here, and that is to, very, very similar to what I do in my traditional work, is I will set up all my paints, get my paper ready, and in that respect, I'm looking at custom palettes. Probably one of the things that I will use and continue to use very, very often in my painting process is to have a custom palette set up for my brushes and for the commands that I use the most in Painter. So you can see here that I've got my brushes set up. The next thing that I would want to consider is my paper texture. And I may change paper textures and work with different paper textures as I'm going through my process, but I will pull out usually 2 or 3 that I use on a consistent basis and get them right on that palette, that custom palette, so I can click on them and pull them and enable them at any point. My color set is also important, and I keep my color right here again on my custom palette where I can pull up my mixer, my color set libraries. But what I've done here is I've actually added a layer. I've locked it because I don't want to paint on it, and if you split it in half, I'm basically working with a cool palette and a warm palette. So I get some of the colors in here that I think I'm going to be using as I start to develop the painting. And in this one, I'm going to be working on more of a representational piece based upon the image. And the next thing I would do here is I will use the new reference image panel. And what I've done here is I have changed the image to a grayscale. Now I do that because it gives me a nice value representation where I can just glance at it and get a good idea of where my darkest darks will be, my lightest values, and then my midtones. So in landscape painting, not always, but traditionally the sky will be one of your lighter values. Your foreground area will tend to be the mid area, and across the center, the foreground and trees will tend to be the darkest of the values that I'm going to be working on. So I may work with a scale of maybe 1 to 7 different values and work with a light to a dark or dark to light, whatever it happens to be in the process. I often will begin with a sketch, which I've gone ahead and laid in some basic sketch marks here that I usually will eventually delete and remove and then go on with the actual painting. So here you can see that I've just laid in some very, very representational lines, just kind of showing where I'm going with it, where I want certain things to be. I will also use the flip horizontal option quite often to flip my image from left to right, right to left, to view it and to get a feeling of how it's going to look both, in both directions. Because oftentimes you'll miss something, and you'll miss a value or a area where you could develop some negative space, and for that reason it's important that I do that. So as I start painting, you're going to see me doing the old flip here quite a bit, and this is just part of my process. I may add also that sometimes I'll actually end up using the flipped version instead of the original version, which I think I'm heading in that direction as I look at this, because I'm looking at my symmetry here and it's getting a little bit too centered for my liking. So I'm going to actually start on the canvas layer here, and I'm using a little brush called Just Paint. And it is based upon more of an opaque type of brush, more of an oil-based brush. And I'm going to begin by just getting down some of the basic shapes within the image. And this part of the painting is usually that part of the painting that doesn't look real great. It doesn't have a lot of detail. But what it's telling me and what it's doing for me is it's helping me to build upon something where I can actually work more detail into it and decide at what point, what's going to, in regards to my depth and my focus, what's going to look more, in the distant. How am I going to make these elements that are in the distance look like they're in the distance? So I have to work a lot with different value changes, which are very important as I go forward here. So at this point, it's again very, very sketchy, very, very quick. As you can see, I'm just kind of getting in little representational areas that I want to build upon.
Karen, Carrie has a question for you, and she's wondering if you know that you're going to print on canvas, do you still incorporate paper textures?
We talked a little bit about this in one of our live sessions, and it was kind of all over the place as far as what you would do and how you would print. Some of us felt that the texture is very important to the image, that it's something to build upon when you actually print out the image, because a lot of these are being printed on either canvases or fine art watercolor papers, which already have quite a bit of texture on them. So it really is a matter, I think, basically what we all came to our decision is that it's a matter of what you're really looking for and how you want to continue to build upon that painting. I don't do a lot of printing with canvas, so for me, I would probably be speaking more from the watercolor side of it, and based upon the watercolor side of it, I would have to say that I will tend to keep it rather flat because I'm going to be printing on a textured type of paper, which is a heavy grade, probably 140 or 300 pound watercolor paper, so it's going to be really thick and lots of texture implied. If I'm going to be embellishing then again on top of it, it adds that extra to it, I guess, and I just continue to build upon it. So I hope that answered your question, Carrie. I know it's kind of all over the board, but I think it really depends upon what direction you're going, remember that the texture can enhance and continue to help to enhance the painting as you go forward, or it can diminish from it as well, depending upon where you're going with it. So
She said yes, and thank you, Karen.
okay. All right. At this point also, the brush tip you can see that I'm using is rather small. And I continue to, reference my photo up here, taking little bits of it here and there, getting an idea where I'm going to flow with it, where I'm going to go with it.
We seem to be having a screen redraw issue where we don't actually see every movement of your brush. Someone was just making a comment about that, and I just wanted to, it is that way on my end also.
Okay, so it's really lagging.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to look at what the attendees are seeing, and I'm seeing where I've gone.
You know what? I think it's okay. We see the paint building. It's just not in real time. So
Okay.
it's fine.
You'll notice up here that I also have some little notes here about light source and focal point. So I'm already starting to think about, my light source and why is that important to me, because I really feel that light source is probably one of the most important things in a landscape painting. It's important to me because it gives me the direction I need to develop the painting, and also to make sure that the viewer knows what they're seeing and how they should perceive it. So light is very important. Working with negative space is also a very important thing for me as well in my work. I will often actually carve out the shape of a cloud, for example, by just working around the color that you see here just to develop that shape. So love to work this way. I mean, it's one of my favorite ways of working and developing paintings as I go forward here. Okay.
There was just one other comment from Josie, and she was wondering if you do print your painting, do you continue and ever add mixed media to it?
Yes, I do. I had mentioned that I don't tend to print much on canvas, but I do print out on watercolor, and I embellish quite a bit with adding watercolors, inks, tissue papers, rice papers, and gold leaf. I have a lot of fun with that. In fact, I'm even trying to develop a little class for DAA on actually embellishing with the watercolors and actually doing some collage work. So it's a real exciting way to work from digital media to traditional media and work this way. So lots of fun.
Ooh, terrific. There's good response to that class that you just mentioned. And I noticed that you just announced your Painter X3 class.
Yes, our wonderful instructor, Elena Moore-Kelly, has just finished Introduction to Painter X3, and this is part 1. A great refresher course for you. Also is the Painter 12 classes that are there as well. Even if you haven't purchased X3 yet and you want to learn Painter, there's so much that's similar between Painter 12 and X3. You could easily jump in there with those classes as well. But X3 is up and ready to go.
Okay, terrific. So I'm going to go ahead and pass along control to Peggy.
Hey there, how are y'all?
Okay, you've got control.
Super, thank you so much.
There was a question that came in, and it could be addressed to any of you. Would you tend to use more than just one reference image in your work? And if you do so, how do you approach that? I can think of one way. Any thoughts?
Oh, I use multiple reference images quite a bit. One of the ways I do is actually combine them into a single image and then edit the image that way by bringing in that part of the reference that I want to use. But I just love this new reference image on Painter X3. It's terrific. Love it. Love using it that way.
Do you think you could also incorporate the use of the clone source panel? Would that work or would that not work? To load up multiple images that you could reference?
Well, this is Peggy here, and I'm about to show exactly how I do use that, and I'm going to be talking about that a little bit for my project today. So first of all, I've already, you can see I changed the image size. I kind of went the opposite way of Skip, sorry, my brother-in-law's name, Chip. Skip zoomed in using the reference panel to crop in and give himself a wonderful kind of view of the pines. And I did the opposite. I thought, you know, I love this picture, but I feel like I want some more air and atmosphere. And my approach to this particular image is going to be to add a lot of color. And I also was reminded of Cezanne a little bit, just in terms of the very warm colors in those mottled rocks and the lichens, and then the beautiful greens and the blues in the distance. So you can see on my desktop in this workspace that I have, I've got first of all, the mixer panel. I loaded in a Cezanne image. I've surrounded myself with Cezanne. In fact, if you look at this closely, the way you can load an image into your mixer panel is you click on the tiny little disclosure triangle, which is a little hard to see, but it is there, and you go down to Open Mixer Pad, and then you're able to access any number of files from within your computer.
Peggy.
So, yes.
I'm not seeing your mixer pad. I'm seeing the inspiration image there. Am I the only one? Just want to make sure. Okay, so I've got some people commenting that they don't see anything.
Okay, hang on just a second. Let me get my engineer.
So I'm taking a look here. You know, if any of you have questions right now, go ahead and pop them into the questions panel, and we can address some of those while we're just troubleshooting what's going on.
Would you like me to show the template then?
Yeah, let's do that. Switch it over to you, Skip. Okay.
Okay, so if I were going to make a template, what I would do is, this is a template here that I've made previously. And all I did here was I just brought in a layer that has a pattern on it that gives me this texture. I added a group that gives me my signature, and I added the water. Now, to make it a watercolor layer, to make it a template, you have to save it as a template. So right now, see, it says Untitled 8. Okay, so if I come up to File, Save As, where I want to go to, oh great, I'm already there. Let's go back to Desktop. I would go first to my desktop. Now this is for a PC. Then I would go to my User folder. Then I would go to App Data, Roaming, Corel, and then I would go to Painter X3. And it's important to go to the workspace you're currently using. You would have a default, and then you might or might not have other workspaces. I'm currently in Skip X3, so I click there. Now once I go there, you'll see that there's a lot of folders, and you'll have those same folders. Well, you want to go to the Templates folder and open it, and then save your file as whatever you want to call it. And we'll do this one for fun. We'll call it Paint Jam 2 Demo. Okay, then you would save that file in there. Now, here's the trick. You can't get to it or open it until you close Painter. So give me just a second. We'll save this file, save as, and I don't want to go there. We'll go back to, let's see. Let's go to traditional paint jam pantry. Sorry, I should have saved that. Okay, now that's saved. What else have I got here? Before I close this, while this is open, let's look for a Mac. You would do this. You go to your username, then to Library, Application Support, Corel. Now, this is for another thing, but you would say Painter X3, and then your workspace name. Now, forget the rest of this. After you get to the workspace name, you would go here. You would look down the list until you find Template, and that's where you would store it for a Mac. Okay, now we're just going to close that, close Painter, and then we can reopen Painter. Okay, now once Painter opens, come on Painter, there you go. I can come right here to open an image template and come down the list, and there's Paint Jam 2 Demo. Click on that, and there's your template. Now you can, when it opens, it's going to give you an untitled name. And so then you can save that as anything else. But you've got your template that you can use over and over and over again to make multiple images. And it's a great way to work. So it just takes a lot of your effort away. That's it. Peg, you ready?
Hello, hello.
Peggy, are you ready for us to give you control?
Yeah, now I haven't solved what maybe is a screen resolution problem, so what I'm going to do is you should go ahead and give me control, and I have a screenshot of my last point, and I'd be happy to talk about everything I said.
Okay.
And I'll talk you through it all.
All right, you've got.
How's that?
Yep. We
Good?
Can.
Excellent. Now this is just a screenshot. It's an illusion. It's not actually my workspace. But let me tell you my process and what I worked on here. So I, first of all, changed the shape of the image because I wanted to have more sky to play around with. And I went into Photoshop to do that, and I basically copied and pasted bits of the sky on, and you see there are little remnants of the same clouds repeated. But I don't worry about that because the way that I'm working is just to simply go in and add lots and lots of paint to it. So I didn't worry about that little detail. I also spent quite a bit of time, because of the Cezanne inspiration that I was particularly thinking of and drawing on, to set up in both the mixer panel and in the new reference panel, which I absolutely love. I put in Cezanne images, and I was able to actually use the eyedropper tool and physically select colors from within this image, which I felt was sort of appropriate for this part of the beautiful pines image. But up here we have another Cezanne image, which I was able to load into the mixer panel, using this little tiny triangle, disclosure triangle. You click on that and you get a menu that says Open Mixer Pad, and then you can go ahead and select from any number of files on your desktop or in your computer. So I found one of my favorite Cezannes, which is this one, Mont Saint-Victoire. Has fabulous sky colors and not just the usual blue and white, but some other beautiful, beautiful kind of combinations. So I also used the new clone source panel, which you see over here, and I in fact started with the original image, which I've titled here, that I had changed, of course, slightly, and I wanted to have that there to look at and use as my kind of main look at reference image. Why? Because I put in the Cezanne images in my other areas that I could use. So this is fabulous, and it allows me to switch between different clone sources, and I really do apologize for not being able to show this to you live, but if I were to click on any one of these, the appropriate image would pop up in this spot, and I would be able to use it either as a clone source using one of the clone tools, or to take color from, or to simply look at as an inspiration. And I'm just thinking if there's any questions that I can answer at this point. I'd be happy to talk about some of the brushes that I use to get to this stage right here in the middle, which is, I'd say, kind of half-cooked, you could say, Julia Child style. And I can tell you some of the brushes that I used if people are interested in that, or answer any questions.
Okay, I'm taking a look here, and there was, okay, if anyone has any questions about Peggy's specific brushes, go ahead and enter that into the questions panel. Sumia was wondering, and I can't remember, if Skip was on the flow map brush category. While we've got some other questions coming in here.
Are you asking me that?
Yep.
Yes, I did have the flow map set on my real watercolor brush panel, so that whatever flow map I had up would affect the runs of the paint.
And were those custom flow maps that you created, or what's?
Oh yeah, yes, they're custom flow maps, and I'll be glad to make those available to everybody on the blog. Okay, terrific. And we've got some questions. Let's see here. So George is wondering for Peggy, I know that you were planning on using the clone panel. He's wondering if you used any clone brushes in your work.
I do use clone brushes from time to time, and I would say that at the very beginning I don't use clone color at all. And the reason is that I want to really energize the artwork as much as possible and go with big brushes and bold, motion really, to give it air and energy and kind of, a little bit of hopefully bristling excitement. And then I will often use a clone brush to reduce some of that perhaps later on. For instance, in the image you're looking at right now in the center, I clicked on the clone source. It was the original one, which didn't have all the activity that you see here. In fact, it's this image. And I used the soft cloner to bring back some of that nice soft blue and white sky because I had a little too much going on there. I also use, I have to say, my favorite cloner of all is the Smeary Camel Cloner, because you can click in and out of clone color to using the color wheel to choose color, and it is a very seamless and intuitive kind of switch, and it makes lovely oily marks, and I used a lot of that in fact in here.
And what parts of your painting did you use palette knives for?
Well, I used a wonderful palette knife, the Smeary palette knife. You can see, in fact, it's selected up there in this shot, because I wanted to kind of coalesce some of the areas that had gotten a little bit too busy. So because I allow myself to get kind of scribbly with a lot of the way I've applied the color, there are certainly times when it needs to be kind of reined in. So the Smeary palette knife was terrific. It deposits a little bit of color and it moves around the paint. It's really very much like using a real palette knife, which, by the way, I use all the time in my what I call analog painting on canvas with regular oil paint.
And while you were painting what we're seeing here, were you listening to any music?
Oh boy, you guys know me. I actually wasn't. I was thinking in this case I'm going to try to find a piece of music for next time and tell you what it is so you all can listen along for inspiration. I was thinking about Respighi's Pines of Rome, but I realized it was a little too medieval sounding, and this is really looking more like an American sort of landscape to me. So if anyone has any suggestions, I'd love to know.
Okay, I'll wait for those to come in the panel. While we're waiting for those, there's another question just in regards of, would you ever tend to use the reference image panel and the clone source at the same time? I think that's what they mean. Yes, okay.
Yeah, I do, and I am using them at the same time. And I guess I would ask, what do you mean by use? Because I said yes to using them both, first of all, to look at, but also you can sample color from them. So you can go to this new reference image that we have here, or of course to the clone source.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out, I was going to see if I could unmute Sumia so that she could clarify for us exactly what she meant. Let's see here. And there was a suggestion for Chopin.
Ooh,
Yes, music.
Chopin. I love Chopin.
Another question from Marge is, what did Peggy do to make her other clone sources? So how would you edit?
Yes, I can tell you that. Absolutely. This is one of the great ways that we can easily move between clone sources, multiple clone sources in X3. So when you have your image selected, if I were really doing this, I would click on this, oops, on Pines 14. I made everything blue. Let's get rid of that. Uh-oh. Hold on. Things are going wild here. So I would click on the central image, my working image, and then I would get in the clone source panel the option, and you can look right at the bottom. You see this little, tiny little dialog box with an arrow, and that you click on that, and it will give you another dialog box that says, would you like to add, would you like to search for another image to add to your clone source panel? And you say yes, and you can once again look around, and it takes you straight into any of the files you have that are images that can be read by Painter, and you can open them up. Now, one of my favorite things to do is actually leave my own versions of my artwork as I create it in progressive order in this clone source panel, because then I can go back to earlier stages, and if I get really lost, which certainly does happen, and then I can also bring in something that's completely different as long as it's the same size.
Okay, terrific. So I found Sumia. She actually entered in the question here, but I'm going to go ahead and attempt to unmute you so that you can ask your question live. You're unmuted. Don't be shy.
My question was, hi everybody.
Hi.
My question is, can you work from both panels between the two, go back and forth to grab colors, do montages as to pick parts of images from one or the other?
To my knowledge, yes, and that is how I've been working. And I assume you're talking about between the clone source panel, which is the one you see down on the lower left-hand side of my screen, and in fact the image that's right above it, the little square version.
Right.
And then on the other side, the Cezanne peasant image.
Exactly.
Yes, and you can use those simultaneously. You can very freely go between them, which is a wonderful analogy to the real world, multimedia studios that we have as painters and analog painters. You have multiple photos sitting around that you might be using for reference. You have, all these different possible piles of paint, like in the color set library that you see there. And the mixer panel, I think, is really cool. I don't know if you got a chance to see that up there, but you can also use that as yet a third source.
Wow.
And it's, you have to use kind of a tiny little JPEG in there. You can't put in a really detailed, colorful image, but it's super helpful.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Enjoy.
Can't wait.
Good.
Okay, so Marge has made a comment that you paint plain studio. But I don't see any other questions coming in at the moment here. So I'm thinking that possibly we can stop here, add a little suspense. We'll save some of the painting for our next session, which is next Wednesday, and you guys can pick up where you left off here, because I think y'all, you may have a little bit more that you can paint on your images. And let's see, Josie, the Cezanne mix is your makeup or Painter?
The Cezanne mix comes from Jeremy's Paintbox TV extras, basically. And you can find that particular set by going to Paintbox TV and becoming a member. It's available to his members. I would also say, however, that you can capture your own color set libraries from any image, and the way you're going to do that is very similar to the clone source panel over here with the small folder at the bottom. It's the same thing in the color set library, so I'm kind of gesturing. I hope you can see that. But you're going to want to click on this plus button. Oh, I'm sorry, that's wrong. You're going to go up to the top to this tiny little box here with a little tiny arrow. Click on that, and it will give you an option to save as a color set. And it's a fabulous way to get all these little squares that have basically been cooked down into like little Pantone colors for you out of virtually any image that you put in. In fact, oh, I wish I could scroll, but you know, you can really go wild with that. And I say, why not give yourself all the options, you know, that are available?
And what's even greater about Painter X3 is the fact that you can either minimize or maximize the amount of colors that it pulls, where previously in 12 it would just give you every single color option from the image that you were working on. Now you can use the slider to minimize or maximize the number of colors.
That's right. There's a slider that allows you to select up to 256 separate variations of any one of the images that you're using. So that's pretty cool. But if you don't want to waste the real estate that you have on lots of little squares, you just want a sense of it, you can reduce it to, you know, 15, 20, anything in between. So it is really nice.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.